face the choice. Will I grow or decline? That's the choice I'm facing. Will I progress or will I regress? Will I expand or will I contract? And all of those questions affect how you live every day of your life and what you choose to do. So if you're going to be engaged in life, if you are actually going to discover some of the most wonderful things about yourself that you had not known before, so opening yourself up to all sorts of possibilities, that life is not over by any means. All you've done is written several chapters of the book of your life, but now while you're alive, there's more chapters to write. Now, what will those chapters be about?
Hello, my friends. I'm Gary Scott, and this is the What If You Could podcast. And today, my guest is David McNally. Hello, David.
Hello there, Gary. Pleasure to be with you today. Yes.
It's a pleasure to be anywhere for us, right?
Yeah.
So, guys, David McNally is the author of the best-selling books, Even Eagles Need a Push, The Eagle's Nest, and Be Your Own Brand, among many other things. And David's groundbreaking new book, If You're Alive, Your Mission on Earth Isn't Finished. But that's not even the tip of the iceberg of this young man. There's so much wonderful stuff to get into. And I promise I'll shut up in a second. But first, for the What If You Could podcast. So I always ask my guests when we start the show, Mr. David McNally, what is your What If You Could?
Well, I'm going to give you something I believe is unique. And the reason being, when you asked me the question, I thought, my goodness gracious, I'm turning 80 this year, and I've had a lot of experiences. So when I get to that question, what if I could, although I still have things that I want to experience in that, a very unusual thing came to me, Gary, and that was this. So I have had obviously the unfortunate experience of losing two wives. I've been married twice. My first wife, you know this experience yourself, died when she was 57 from ovarian cancer. And then 2.5 years ago, my second wife, who I didn't marry until I was 70, rather late in life, but had the good fortune to meet this wonderful woman in our 60s, she passed away from Alzheimer's. So I have lost two wives. But the story around that occurred to me was that about a month before my second wife passed away, her name was Cheryl, and my first wife's name was Jo, short for Josephine. And Cheryl was always very generous, talking about Jo, always very, very generous. And I always loved that about her. But about a month before she passed away, she asked me a question. And she said, David, do you think I'll meet Jo in heaven? And I said, absolutely, you will. She said, I will. I said, yeah. She said, well, what will she say to me? And I said, I know exactly what she will say to you. She'll say to you, how the heck did you put up with him for so long? So if I had a if I had a what if I could, Gary, it would be I would love to be in conversation with my two wives, who I believe would be getting along fabulously, and just hey. How's it going, guys? Where are you? Love to know what you're doing, and that would be my what if I could.
Well, out of the 260 times I've asked that question, that's got to be one of the best ever, man. That is very good. And I think to myself, because I talk to my wife all the time up wherever she is, who knows where she is. I always ask her, what's going on? Here's what's going on with the kids and stuff. My second wife, I did remarry a couple of years ago. She's still alive, but she's very gracious about my wife also. I don't know if I want those two to meet. But I love that you do, and I just think it's fabulous that actually my two wives would get along really well. They'd get along swimmingly. They're both Geminis, and I think they'd get along very well. But that's really wonderful. That's great. I can see them comparing notes right now as they're playing bridge or backgammon or something, drinking wine and going, "Remember when that SOB said this? Can you build?"
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, 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 yeah.
So where are you? Where are you physically? I pick up a little tiny hint of an accent when I was listening to all your other stuff.
Well, number one, I live in Minnesota, so I live in Minneapolis, the heart of lots of action right now, as you've probably seen in the. So I
No,
live
I
here.
haven't heard a thing about Minneapolis lately.
So
I hear this. I hear it's cold. There's a lot of ice on the road. I hear it's cold. I hear there's a lot of ice and it's
yeah,
cold.
yeah, yeah. There's all
Yeah.
sorts of different ice here at the moment. Um, so no, I've been here for 45, nearly 46 years. So the way I describe myself is I'm a British born in the East End of London, Australian bred. My parents went to Australia when I was 9 years of age, so I grew up in Australia. Have still have two brothers there, two younger brothers. So I grew up in a place called Adelaide, South Australia. And I came here in 1980 with a career job opportunity at 35 years of age, and have stayed and built a career here for myself. So I love it here. I'm an American citizen now, and my five children are here. I have grandchildren. So although the cold is getting to me these days, I do get the opportunity to get out. And I go down to Australia every year for a few weeks to be in my hometown with my family down there. So that's the origin of this accent that I know is hard to pick up sometimes. Yeah.
Did your now were your parents criminals? Is that why they sent them to Australia from London
Yeah.
or no? Now you
No.
have five children. Did they
Yeah.
escape the
Yeah.
Great White North, or are they still there?
Yeah, no, they're still here. I have four actually in the Twin Cities, and one in North Carolina. One in North Carolina. Yeah, the four here are all well, three of them are entrepreneurs. One works for an airline company, and my daughter, who lives in North Carolina, she's an artist, and she has her own place there in a beautiful area called Burnsville, North Carolina. So, but
Yeah.
we're all very close as a family. Gary, one of the things that I always said when I was young and I had this large family was success to me later on in life would do my kids love each other, and I'm fortunate to say that they do. And that to me means a tremendous amount. So we have a lot of fun together. Sense of humor, laughter is a big part of our family culture. So that makes life terrific. We're always sending funny messages to each other, and yeah, so it's excellent. Yeah,
I love that so much. Family is so important. And now, that you're the elder statesman here, which I want to get into because I found all of your stuff so fabulous. But I mean, the blessing of children. My heart aches for the people who can't have them, and I'm curious about the folks who don't want them. But I have three grandchildren now, and I tell you, like David, that you're just nothing like the grandchildren. It's beyond anything. When your son or daughter hands you that little critter, you just go, I'm never giving it back. Well, I am because I get to, but but there's something about that, isn't it? There's something
yeah.
about the grandkids. It's something
Oh,
else.
well, I mean, you get started all over again, and then you find out how much joy there is in, going to their games, whether it's volleyball or football. I play golf with a couple of my grandsons, and
That's
um,
awesome.
and it's very special. It's an extraordinary thing to be able to do. I was never even a father, Gary. I was never a father who could sit around and play games and do stuff like that. I never fished, so I didn't take my kids fishing. So I have one son and four daughters. So my son's in therapy about the fact I never took him fishing. I said,
God, I
"You're
hope he's
watching
not
too
the
many
youngest.
movies."
Is he the youngest?
No, he's right in the middle. I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
he's right in the middle. Yes. And when he
Because
got to,
my brother
yeah,
has five kids. The first four were girls. And I said, look, buddy, it's just not going to happen for you, bro. Stop trying to have the boy. You're just not cut out God doesn't want you to have a boy. Sure enough, they have one more. It's a boy. And I say to Con all the time, you poor kid. But they're all brilliant and they're all funny and I adore them. His kids are like my kids. And our kids are all very close. But yeah, the four girls, one boy.
yeah, it's a big one. When he graduated from high school, he couldn't wait to get away from home. He just was so tired of his sisters, you know, you know, sort of pushing him around, telling him to do this and that. So he got away so far. He went to Australia, right, where I grew up, because he said, "Dad, I'm getting as far out of here as I can." And when I was an adolescent in Australia, I was a surfer. So I surfed the beaches of Australia for about 10 years, and that became his dream. He wanted to go to Australia and surf, and he did that for a couple of years, and it was great for him. Really great. Yeah.
You know, it's funny. I do pick up, at first I thought it was a British accent, but now I pick up more of an Australian accent. I've had the pleasure of interviewing dozens of people from Australia. It's so weird. I don't know why I got on this Australia kick. I've had people from all over the world. This has just been such a glorious ride. But yeah, I've talked to a lot of people from Australia, and I just love it. And you know, the chicks dig that Australian accent, man. The women just love that Australian accent. So I know you play it up when you're around the girls.
Well, I tell you what, even though I'm getting near 80, I'm now single again. You know, I might even start to use it. You never know, right?
Let's get into that. That's a perfect segue into your if you're alive. I love this title. If you're alive, which some people don't know if they are or not, if you're alive, your mission on Earth isn't finished. I love everything about that, and I'm turning 63 in another month. And besides almost dying of cancer and the cardiac arrest and stuff, I'm really healthy. I feel great. And I always think about my 100th, getting to 100. And I think I'm going to be snowboarding with my grandkids and great grandkids when I'm 90 and 95 years old. So when I came upon you and I came upon that book title, I just love everything about that.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, there's a beautiful story behind that, if I can share that with you.
No, we
How
don't
I
have the time. Of
that
course, I
again
can't wait to hear it.
goes back to my wives. It goes back to my wives. My first wife, when she passed away, I headed down to my hometown, Adelaide, Australia, to grieve, be with my brothers and my dad, who was alive at that time, and just to figure out, oh my gosh, this is big. Was not my vision for what was going to happen, and you understand that perfectly. So I was walking along the beaches, and I was doing something that you mentioned a little earlier that you do, and that is speak to your wife. And I started speaking to her. Her name again was Jo, because the grief counselors tell you to do that. I always like to say the one thing the grief counselors don't tell you is what do you do when they answer back? That's the big issue. Albeit in your mind, people can interpret that how they want. But I'm walking along the beach, and I just said, "Okay, I'll try this out." And I said, "Jo," "you were the first one to go." I said, "Why am I still here?" And Gary, an answer came back so clearly to me and immediately. He said, "David, because you still have work to do." And what that meant to me was this: in my philosophy of life, that meant I still had growing and learning and contributing to do in my life. And so that in the end, I came up with, well, if I'm alive, my mission on earth isn't finished. And so that was the genesis of that, and which was confirmed in a beautiful book by Richard Bach called Illusions, where he talks about the same thing. So I do give him credit for helping me with that. But that was the genesis of the title.
When I read that in your introduction, it just gave me chills. I love that. My wife was 46 when she passed. We had been together 28 years. We were
Wow.
children when we got together, so we didn't have any baggage, right? We didn't have any. Everything we had was from us because we started together, right? We were so young.
Yes.
Now, my second wife, of course, is a cargo ship. It's an actual Chinese cargo ship with garbage and packages and cargo that shows up at my door. I'm like, oh, so this is second wifehood. Um, but my wife was similar. When we talk all the time, and I started doing grief work, grief counseling and coaching because of trying to spend a decade getting through my grief. Um, but it's fascinating what April will tell me, and it's because I go to her for counsel all the time, especially about the boys, about our sons and now the grandsons. And it's marvelous that she gave you the title of that.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. Of course, I didn't use it for a long time because at that time I'm only 57. But as we got on later and I shared the story with people, they said, "Boy, David, that is quite a title." Right. So we used it, and it is resonating with so many people because of the fact that people, as they get older, yeah, we deal with some of the physical things that aging does vary. You can't, you wake up in the morning, your body's a little bit stiff, and you creak and you groan and you do all of that in many ways. But what people are saying, but my mind is so sharp. And that's what I love to say. Yes, we don't lose our imagination. In fact, we can expand our imagination, and there's always opportunities for learning and growing. And I think that we need to understand that every day we face those choices. We face a choice. Will I grow or decline? That's the choice I'm facing. Will I progress or will I regress? Will I expand or will I contract? And all of those questions affect how you live every day of your life and what you choose to do. So if you're going to be engaged in life, if you are actually going to discover some of the most wonderful things about yourself that you had not known before, so opening yourself up to all sorts of possibilities, that life is not over by any means. All you've done is written several chapters of the book of your life, but now while you're alive, there's more chapters to write. Now, what will those chapters be about? And so when people say I'm too old, I say, look, I think about it this way. I'm 80 this year. If I live another 10 years, now I've got people passing away all around me, so I'm not arrogant to say that I'm going to live another 10 years. But if I do, and I keep healthy, man, you can accomplish a lot in 10 years. I mean, that's at least another two books. If I desire to, I could write. There's a lot of places in the world I haven't been. There's many, many different experiences that I haven't had. But that's how we all need to open ourselves up to expand our universe, if you like, into realms unknown.
I love all of that. And like the saying says, we overestimate what we could do in 1 year, but we underestimate what we could do in 5 or 10 years, right? It's unlimited what we could do. And my mom's just turned 90, and she's
Wow.
ridiculously healthy. We're like, when are you gonna go? This is ridiculous. You just hang on forever. She's healthy, she's active, she's sharp as a tack. So I have some longevity in my life, but tell us about your fire pit experience in Tunisia, when you kind of got this elder sort of vibe and wanted to bring that. Had you written the book at that point yet, or did the book come after your trip to Tunisia?
No, I had written three books before then. My first book was published in 1990, called Even Eagles Need a Push. You referred to it earlier, Learning to Soar in a Changing World. And that was a huge success. That was it's regarded, forgive this arrogance, but it is regarded as a motivational classic. It sold over 500,000 copies. It was a big seller. And that launched me onto the speaking circuit. And that's so I'd written that book. That was followed up by a book called The Eagle's Secret. That was my second book. And then I co-authored a book called Be Your Own Brand. And then, so when I got to Tanzania, I was turning 60 years of age. And I had a friend of mine who was a career counselor and took people on a trek to Africa every year, to Tanzania, and they trekked. It wasn't a safari. It was backpacking. You had to get really fit for it. It was a 3-week deal, but it was a voyage of discovery. It was people who were saying, what's next for me in my life? And so I went with 9 other men, not purposefully all men. It's just that women didn't sign up that year. And so there was 10 of us, and there was an incredible restaurateur from New York, power guy in New York. There was a publisher of a magazine called Fast Company. Everyone in the group had achieved a degree of success in their lives, and a high degree of success. And we were all there because we were just saying, okay, what is next for me? And one of the guys was 70. He's become one of my good friends. He's nearly 90 now. And what we did was that we would trek. So physically, we would push ourselves as much as possible. And, we saw everything that a safari would, except we were right next to them. We weren't out in a big truck, so we were, it was pretty dangerous out there. In fact, one particular time, we went out early one morning, and we're walking along this path, and the Maasai, who were our guides, one of the guides stopped and looked down, and we asked him, "What is that?" And he said, "Well, that's lion poop." Right? He didn't use that, but that was what it was, right? And I said, so someone said, "Well, how long since they'd gone by?" Right? And he said, 5 minutes. 5. So I was at the back of the pack, and I ran up into the middle of the pack.
You're no dummy. I don't need to outrun everybody. I just need to outrun the slowest guy.
Exactly. So we would do the trekking, and then at night the fires would be lit. We would sit around the campfire, and the guy leading us would throw out some really provocative and profound questions that we would, wrestle with and noodle on with each other. But the beautiful part about it was the elders, the older Maasai warriors, they would sit with us. And they would be interpreted, but they would get involved in the questions as well. And the young Maasai would stand around us in a protective circle. So it was right out of a postcard, right out of a movie. It was just magnificent. But the thought that occurred to me there was that they called themselves the elders. They were the elders, the older guys, the elders of the tribe. And I love that as a way of describing us versus a senior citizen. I think senior citizen, yeah, okay, we know what that means, but it's so unimaginative as a title. When we see ourselves as elders, what happens for that is we realize that we are the holders of the wisdom, and we all have a tremendous amount of wisdom. Everybody has a lot of wisdom who's got into their 60s and 70s. Now, a lot of that wisdom, of course, comes from the mistakes that we've made and the way we've screwed up, right? But we have a lot of wisdom. And so the book, if you're alive, your mission on earth isn't finished, is about helping people understand their role as an elder and take on that role and take on that responsibility. So at the same time, you open yourself up to all sorts of things that you can now be doing. You still also take on, what does it mean for me to be an elder? And I'll give you an example of this that comes from a television show that I quite enjoy called Finding Your Roots. Have you ever heard of that show, Gary, at all? Okay.
Called Finding Your Roots.
Yeah, Finding Your Roots. It's a wonderful show on PBS. And I've just, oh my gosh, lost the man's name who is the host of it. He's and I say that, and now I'm going to say he's very well known. I can't remember his name, but that's another story. But what he does is he has two guests. One of them is the two of them, they're either celebrities or whatever. They could be from the sports world, from the entertainment world. They could be well-known philosophers. They could be a lot of different things. But obviously, he has to pick people that will draw an audience. But when he picks them, and then what he does is that he has this very sophisticated team who go into the ancestry of the guests. And as you probably, I don't know what it is for you, but most of us know who our grandparents are. Then we may know who our great grandparents were, but beyond that, it disappears. That we don't know much. Well, he takes them all the way back 200 or 300 years to get into their ancestry. And what happens, of course, is that you find people, white people, who find out that they have African American or Asian people in their background and never dreamed of it, and black people who find that they have white people in their background, in their ancestry. So that's the kind of thing, and it's a very wonderful exploratory show. What I'm getting to, however, is this. In the end, when he asked him the question, what does this all mean to you? Over and over again, the guests will say, well, now I understand it was because of the sacrifice, what my ancestors did, whether coming to this country of the United States or whatever they did, what they did to create a better life, I am the beneficiary. So they made the possibilities for my life possible through what they did themselves. And so there's an enormous sense of gratitude for that. So what I would like us to think about, what is it when we're the ancestors, when people go back generationally and say, oh, Gary was my great grandfather, or oh, what will be said about us in terms of how we built the shoulders upon which others could stand to go into the future. And I think that is another part of being an elder, opening possibilities and also being responsible for our part in creating a world where other younger people can have their opportunities like we had them when we were young.
Well, I love that, and I love history. I'm a big history buff. Love, love, love. Most of my books behind me are history and biographies. I love biographies and autobiographies. And I don't watch a lot of television, but when I do, I watch a lot of these docudramas. They're kind of,
Yes.
there's a lot of acting, but then the British guy will always come up. It's always the British guy will come up between scenes and go, and that's why Alexander the Great was so spectacular because his military assessment was bizarrely wonderful. And then you'd go back to him killing somebody. And but the docudramas are so great, and I think to myself all the time is imagine, like you said, when they go back and they said, "Hey, Uncle G, Grandpa G, my great grandpa who I used to snowboard with, I can pull up on my phone all these recordings of him and all of these things, but we don't have that for our elders. And we used to back in the day when families would to get together for Sunday dinner or grandma lived in the house or things like that. We would hear the stories of our past. There's a lot of communities who still do that, but it's a tragically lost art, isn't it? Of how we take care of our elders and how we pass on that knowledge.
You're absolutely right. I think that we are maybe the last generation, and I say we. I mean, again, you're much younger than I am, but you can remember when we did sit around the dinner table and stories would be passed down. My mother was a phenomenal storyteller. She had an incredible background. She was brought up by a single mother. So my mother was born in 1923. My grandmother was 17 when she had my mother, and they were just really powerful women because my grandmother said that to the guy who was the father, said, "I'm not marrying you." And he said, "You're not marrying me? Think about this. This is 1923. And you're not marrying me?" And she said, "No." He said, "Why?" She said, "Because I know you don't love me. I'm not marrying someone who doesn't love me." Now, that was a very powerful thing to say 100 years ago. That was
Yeah.
extraordinary. So my mother was brought up by a very extraordinary mother, and she inherited that. And then in the Second World War, she was a flight mechanic on the Spitfires in the British Air Force. And so she had an incredible background, all her adolescence, as was my father, who was in the Merchant Navy, was all in the Second World War. I mean, 5 years of all it was just wartime. But what happened was that when we were growing up, my mother, we would sit around having a cup of tea with her, and she would just tell us these stories. And, we were just so captivated by them. And I remember now so many of them. And there will be times with my own children where there will be a catalyst for a story. And I will tell them a story about their grandmother or their grandfather, and they will be fascinated by it, and they will absolutely love it. They really will. So that's another thing that's happening today.
My history, I didn't know because my dad has an amazing history, an amazing family, but I never knew about it because when he got out of the Navy, he changed his name from Sanchez to Scott. And I was grown up a Scott. And when I turned 28 and we were going to have kids, my mom said, "Well, you should probably tell him." And so I'm like, "Tell me what? I hope I'm adopted. Please say I'm adopted. Please say I'm adopted." "No, you're not adopted." So apparently, my dad has I've dug into it now, and now I know our family, his family came here in 1508 from Spain, and we were here before it was America. We have a huge thing called the Atrisco Land Grant out in New Mexico,
Mm.
660,000 acres that our family. We have schools and cities and a whole heritage museum about the Atrisco Land Grant and our ancestors. So I never met my grandmother or grandfather because when he changed his name from Sanchez to Scott, they disowned him. And so I just thought they were dead. I just thought, well, grandma and grandpa's die. I don't know. So it was really bizarre when I discovered this massive ancestry. So now I push my boys to get in it and dig into it and realize this heritage that we have. And but it was racism. He was a little wetback, a spick, a beaner, and I guess he just didn't want to be that, so he changed his name to a really weird name like Scott. But imagine what we lost, right? Imagine what we lost by taking our name, taking our heritage, taking our history. It's not everyone has that type of history. We have a pretty amazing history, but um, it's so wonderful that you're had your grandmother and then your mother, and now you are able to share these stories because it's your history, it's your DNA, it's your legend, it's everything that they are, and it's so important.
Yes, and one of the things that is happening, because several people have told me about it, is that and I don't know I can't remember the name of the software program, but whereby it's being given as a gift to grandparents or to parents that are older, and it takes you through and asks you a whole lot of questions and you're really telling the story of your life, but through these prompts. And I think that's the most, I think that's the most marvelous thing. I really do. Yeah, and I encourage everybody to do it.
We tried to get my mom to do it because she has an amazing story that we only have bits and pieces of, but it's an amazing story, my mom's growing up story. And we've tried to get her to do it. She won't do it. And I did ancestry.com
Oh
because I
yes,
wanted to see if what I've been reading was true. She won't do ancestry.com. I mean, not ancestry.com. I did that too to try to
yeah.
build the family tree. No, I did the blood thing, not 32 and Me, or
My
I did the
heritage.
thing, the DNA where they take your DNA and they do your history. What's
Yeah,
that thing
well, that's
called?
ancestry and my heritage, isn't it?
Is
My
it
heritage.
ancestry? Okay. Yeah, so I
Yeah,
did that and it was shocking. It's like you're like, boom, dude, you're from Iberia, which is Spain, right? And you're
yeah.
from New Mexico. And
Wow.
there's a little bit of Africa in there, like 3% Africa. So I'm an African American basically, but it was amazing. So it backed up what I had been reading about my history, that my DNA says you are full blown. You're Spanish, bro. You're Spanish and you're New Mexico. And that's exactly what the history of my family was. Crazy.
Yes. Yeah, fascinating, absolutely And I think as you get older, many people get more interested in that. You know, where did I come from? How did I end up being who I am? Why do I have certain gifts and talents? Did I inherit that from, or who did I inherit that from in my family? And so, I have mechanically. I am useless. So I'm not a mechanical person at all. And I'm
I
absolutely
don't know which end of a screwdriver to use. I have a screwdriver. I just don't know which end I'm supposed to use. So I don't pick it up. I don't want to hurt myself or hurt any or like blow out the electricity in my house. So no, I don't touch those things.
but I have two of my daughters who are amazing mechanically. They are so good at fixing things. They have their own drills, they have their own tool set. And I think to myself, my God, well, you obviously didn't get it from your dad. I think they got part of it from their mother, but so that's the wonderful thing about children and grandchildren, how you just need to look at them and observe them and realize, no, they are not you. They've got a lot of your DNA, but they are a unique creation of which one needs to observe and enjoy, support, and encourage. I think that's our role.
Yeah, my son is a contractor now. And I'm like, I don't know where you got that from. Dude, it wasn't from me at all. But the other thing I love about your book is it reminds me of a gal I interviewed for the podcast who went in after she lost her grandmother, who she adored. They would talk for hours, right? And she said there's so much wasted knowledge out there. So she'd go to these senior communities and start talking to people and realize that, like 80 years old, you're sharp, you've got so much knowledge, you've got some more books in you. And so she started taking these people around to schools and to different communities and have them speak. And like she had an astronaut and she had surgeons and she had, professors, and these people had so much knowledge and she dragged them around. It changed their life. It added years to their life because everyone needs a purpose, right? And I love that about if you're alive. Again, some people aren't sure. Put a mirror under your nose, check if you're alive. your mission on earth isn't finished. And I love that so much because Zig Ziglar used to always say, Zig would say, don't die with your music still in you. And it's just your book and your message is so powerful that way. Like, we've got so much left to give until that last breath. Why are you giving up? You know, why are you slowing down? Why are you thinking you can't do something, right?
Yes, there's all sorts of wonderful quotes I use in my presentation. One of them that I love is the great cellist Pablo Casals, who was interviewed when he was turned 85, and the reporter said, "You know, Mr. Casals, they say you still practice 5 hours a day. Why?" He said, "Because I think I'm getting better." Right? And then
That's
another
awesome.
quote I use is by Cher, where Cher said, someone said to Cher, "Don't you think you're too old to sing rock and roll?" And she said, "Why didn't you ask Mick Jagger?" Right? So I mean, it was like, hey, right? But one of my favorite stories is of George Burns when he was 99. Right, George Burns said, "Do you know the story at all?" It's 99. He's being interviewed by a reporter because he's just getting to his 100th birthday. And he said, "Mr. Burns, you're sitting there, you're drinking a scotch and smoking a cigar. What does your doctor say?" He says, "I don't know. He's dead."
He died.
And,
And I remember, I think it was Radio Music City Hall, or he had already booked a big venue for his 100th birthday. And just he had a fluke fall, just slipped in the shower and hit his head. I mean, he would have flown past 100. It was just a fluke thing. But yeah,
yeah,
he had already booked that big place for his 100th birthday. But I remember that quote. What's your doctor think? I don't know. He died. I just I love it. I love that. And we have a venue out here called Coachella. It's in the city of Indio, but there's a Coachella next to Indio, and it's a big music concert, right? Like you
oh,
ever been to this
yes, yes.
massive? I don't know if you heard of it. A lot of people have heard of it now. So they have this massive, like week-long music festival, and now they do it for Stagecoach. They bring in country. But one year they did this thing called Desert Trip, and they had the Rolling Stones, Bob Dylan, The Who, Paul McCartney, Roger Waters. Um, God, Who was the other group? Anyways, it was incredible, right? It was called Desert Trip, and Rolling Stones were. This is only like 6 years ago, so the Rolling Stones were still up there. Bob Dylan was. Paul McCartney was like 78, when he did it. The Who, I mean, it was crazy. So we called it Old Cella. We just changed the name to Old Cella. And we thought they hadn't really been touring a lot up to that point. A lot of them had slowed down, especially the Who and the Rolling Stones. So we thought, these guys, I'm going just for the heck of it, right? So I get the T-shirt, but these guys, it'll be for nostalgia, right? No way. David, I gotta tell you, these guys were incredible. Paul McCartney, they had to drag him off the stage. That guy will play forever and ever and ever. It's incredible. I mean, they're still going now in their late 70s and 80s.
Absolutely, they are. They're in their 80s now. They are
Yeah.
absolutely in their
Mick
80s.
Jagger's still having babies with 20-year-olds at eight.
Well, I think what's important about that, again, you go back to the fact uh, that you accept that you're getting older, but you don't language your life in ways that make you feel old. So I don't use the word old. I don't describe myself as old. I describe myself as older. Yes, I'm older. Of course, I'm older. How could I not be older? I'm not in denial. But if I use the word old, then there's an energy around words and language. And in my first book, Even Eagles, I talked about language is the software of the mind. So, be very, very careful of the words that you use. And if you use words that create feelings that you don't want, right? For I'll give you an example. I hate this or I hate that. That's a word that will really promote feelings that are negative, unpleasant, and if that's you don't want those feelings, then don't use that word. Find an alternative word. And I think that becomes even more important as we get older, because one of the pieces of wisdom that I like to put to people is this: we live life on a feeling level. We want to feel good. We obviously want to feel good physically, but we want to feel good about life. We want to feel that our lives are worthwhile, as you talked about earlier. I mean, I produced a documentary called "The Power of Purpose," and you mentioned the word purpose before, and that purpose or need for a compelling reason to get up in the morning never goes away. And why is that important? Because it produces a feeling that my life has meaning, that my life is worthwhile. And so when we get older and we start to not only see what we can continue to create and experience, the big word that comes to me now, Gary, is contribution. It's how do I contribute now? And what will my contribution be? And that contribution doesn't have to be something massive. It comes from the things that we do every day to make our own lives better and the lives of other people better. You know, uh, Mother Teresa's famous quote when they asked her about, well, but what I do is only a drop in the ocean. And she responds by saying, yes, but without that drop, there would be no ocean, or less ocean. And I think that's what we need to realize, that every day we have opportunities to contribute in a way that produces good feelings. And that's not a selfish thing. That's, hey, the one thing I want in my life as I'm getting older is peace of mind. I want to have peace of mind, and I will do anything I do to create peace of mind. And doing things for others, being involved in something that is meaningful, is what gives us that peace of mind. You know, in my book, I tell the story of just before my 72nd birthday, which is in August. So that was several years ago now. I'm sitting there and I was doing an exercise that I have my corporate clients do, and it's called One Day I'm Gonna. We all have an exercise where, or we say, one day I'm going to do this, one day I'm going to do that. And at your age, you probably have a lot more of them than I do at this time, but you have them. And I said, okay, what is the one day I'm going to for you? What is at the top of your list? And it was go to college. I'd never been to college, never spent one foot in a college classroom. I paid for a lot of college with my 5 kids, but I've never been. So I said, well, you're going to be 72. You better get a move on, right? So I found a fabulous program at the University of Minnesota for seniors that seniors could attend. You could get credit if you wanted credit. And I got a counselor, and I enrolled at that fall. And I became, at 72, a freshman at the University of Minnesota. And it has been one of the most fabulous experiences of my life, to be involved with all those young people, to be learning and growing. And these are happening in universities all over the country. This is not exclusive to Minnesota. So again, I encourage anybody, if you've said, I want to finish my degree, or I want to get a master's, or maybe, is it possible for me to get a PhD? Absolutely it is. All right. You just got to get started. It's like writing a book. All right. Get down and write the first page and then write another page and another page. That's the way the whole thing works. Yeah. So here I am. I graduate when I'm 94. You're welcome to come to the ceremony.
Please make sure I get an invitation. I'll be there. Because it'll be in the summertime or the springtime, so I won't be freezing my
It will
butt
be.
off. That reminds me what Tony Robbins says. Tony Robbins says about the shouldas. You ever hear about his deal about the shouldas? He's like, we should have done this, we should do this, we should have done that, we should have done this, and we end up shoulding all over ourselves. And we never we never
Right.
do. We're just stuck in the shouldas, right? And a lot of that is fear. There's so much fear. And I think as you get older, it's a different kind of fear. Like, will I get sick? Will I have run out of money? Will I be useful? Does anybody even care? And there's a different fear of being alone and things like that. But there's always just that fear of, well, I can't go back to college at 72. That's ridiculous, right? I'll humiliate myself. People will think but who cares?
Well, I think that's a beautiful thought there because the who cares is very, very relevant. I mean, when I went to my first day of class, I was incredibly vulnerable. Seriously, I mean, this is a guy I've spoken on the stage with Zig Ziglar. I mean, so I've spoken all over the world with the best speakers in the world, and I was the first day of class. I am vulnerable. I think to myself, wow, it's all these young people. Here's this 72-year-old guy, got his hearing aids. He's got a bald head. What are they thinking? Well, it comes back to the old statement. You don't worry about what they're thinking about you because they're not thinking about you. That's the way it is. They're not. They may look at the back of your head and say, what's he doing in class? But not for long because they're all involved in all their old stuff. And then, Gary, I think what's important is that when you overcome your fear, like you talked about, when you have your fear, you're afraid. But what is courage? Courage is moving forward in the face of fear. So, yes, it is courageous, even if going to that classroom for me and that vulnerability, that was a bit of courage I needed to sum up there. But then things happen that you never anticipate. You can't predict that they will happen. Some of the most beautiful things, and one of those things was what happened to me in my first semester in class when I got to the classroom about 30 minutes early. It took me a long time to realize college students don't get to class 30 minutes early. They're running in at the last minute, right? But here I am in this big classroom all by myself, and a young woman walks in and really looked like a freshman, really looked like a freshman, just very petite. Anyway, she just sat a few seats up, and there's only two of us in the room. What do I say? I don't want to be an old guy hitting on a young girl, or perceived that way. So
But you
I
do have
just
that great accent, though. She's going to dig the accent.
and so I she said, oh, I'm a friendly guy. So I just said, hi there. Are you a freshman? She said, yes, it's my first day of college. And I said, mine too. And she looked at me stunned, and I told her my story, and she just loved it. Well, we went through the whole semester, like just saying hello. She was a few seats away. After Thanksgiving, how was your Thanksgiving? Stuff like that. Anyway, got to the finals. I never forget my first finals I'd ever done in 60 years. And I was sweating it. And I'd been working hard for these finals. I wanted to get an A. And so I got my head down working on that thing. And I finished, went up to the professor, gave him my book, came back to see this young woman whose name was Lauren. And she was gone. She wasn't there. She'd finished early and she just left. I was devastated, right? Absolutely devastated. And I didn't know what to do. I just wanted to wish her all the best. So I get back to my seat, and on my seat, there is a post it note. And the post it note says, Dear David, it has been so much fun being in class with you this semester. Thank you for being my first college friend, Laura. I I still, Gary, yeah, I still have that in my three-ring binder. It's still there. I've stayed in touch with
Ah,
Lauren. She's now married. She lives in another state. And I've had several of that type of experience, different, but with these young people who you make a connection with, and it's
mm.
absolutely gorgeous. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. That it gives me hope. That gives me hope for the world. That's a beautiful story. That's, stuff like that eats me up. I love stuff like that. And, like it made me think of something when you were talking about, just helping that one person, or like she says, that drop of water. Mother Teresa said it's like the starfish analogy. You heard the starfish
Right.
analogy? I
Oh,
love
yeah.
that. Where the guy's chucking, there's millions of starfish on the beach. The guy's chucking a starfish back in the ocean. Someone says, you know that you're not going to get all these in there. You're not going to help with all these starfish. He goes, it helped that one. Right? So
Yeah.
you don't know how you touch someone when you reach out to them like you did with Laura, and just you had an impact on her life that will stay with her. And she had an impact on you
Oh,
that stayed with you. And it's such a beautiful interaction. We need more of that, really.
it is, but you can't have that interaction unless you put yourself out there uh, for that potentiality. So you got to do that, and I can't do it for you. No one can do it for you. That's the whole point of all of this. The world is full of possibilities and full of opportunities and full of things that can cater to us living a very rewarding life. However, we have to have the initiative to move forward and engage. That's our responsibility. But if we do it, we will get to do and have the experiences that I've been talking about, which I think is fabulous.
I love this. I love all of this. I love the book, love the title, dug into some of the other ones. We're big fans of eagles. We have an eagle nest up by our cabin in Big Bear. There's an actual eagle camp, so we could watch them do their things and have their babies and stuff like that. Um, I love everything that you're doing. So you spoke with Zig Ziglar? You guys were on the same stage together?
We were on the same stage. He was the guy who in 1971 I heard in my hometown. I was a 24-year-old. He came on a tour of Australia. I was just in the audience, and he motivated the heck out of me. And I thought to myself, oh my God. At that time, I wasn't thinking of being a speaker. He just opened me up to possibilities. But he gave me his card, which at that time was the name of his first book, See You at the Top. So I kept that. Uh,
Right there.
and 25 years later, 25 years later, I find myself in Rio de Janeiro, uh, Brazil, speaking at a big conference with 30,000 people. And there were two guest speakers, Zig Ziglar and David McNally. It was unbelievable, unbelievable. And I'd never seen Zig or been in communication for 25 years. And we were in the waiting room outside and having a conversation. And I said, Zig, I want to tell you the story of how and when I first met you. Well, he and his wife was there. He was
The
absolutely,
redhead, the
yeah,
redhead.
yeah, absolutely blown away. He was blown away by it. And yes, and we had the most loveliest of conversations. Yeah. So yeah, all of those guys, amazing, just amazing. Mm.
Yeah, he was always my favorite. I had a chance to see him in Los Angeles, and I just didn't get there, and I regretted it for because I mean I've listened to them all, Earl Nightingale's and all of the greats, right? I love all the old greats, but he was my favorite. I mean I literally quote him almost daily. He's got so many great. I talk about the well, pumping that well, he'd bring that well on stage. I just absolutely adore him. So that's a wonderful story. So that's like opening up for the Rolling Stones, man. I mean, that's like opening up for Led Zeppelin, right?
I mean, it's hard to envision looking out over 30,000 people. I mean, it's really hard.
Imagine.
But the funniest thing for me was the fact that I went on obviously before Zig, right? And they had this 24-piece rockin' Brazilian band. They were just going, and the crowd is up there and they, jumping up and down and clapping, and these magnificent Brazilian women in their bikinis, and they just, all over the place. And that all finished, and then the announcer comes in and introduces me. And I go, oh my Lord, what am I now going to do? But they were the most
Oh,
wonderful audience. I think I spent 5 hours that night signing books. Yeah, that was
wow.
just signing books. I mean, just they came from all over the local area. Yeah, it was a experience I'll never forget. Yeah, for sure.
That's like a Woodstock experience, man.
Oh
That's
yeah,
crazy. That's
yeah.
crazy. David, you have been amazing. I'm sorry we went a little bit over, but I could talk to you forever. But I lied earlier. I lied. I'm a liar. I can't help it. I'm a real estate broker. I lie. I said I had one question when we opened, but I actually have two questions, and I give you the what
Okay,
if you could question, but I don't ever give out the second question. So here's my second question for Mr. David McNally. If there was a thought or another quote or a message, if there's something that means something to David in his heart, that David would like to leave with us before we sign off today, what would be that last thought you'd like to leave everybody with?
it's very clear for me that answer to that question, and it's this: is that one's success in life is in direct proportion to the contribution that you make. And that success is how you define it. I define it as being able to live your life in your own way, right? That's success. But when you look at the principle of contribution, Gary, what you find out is that everything in life, including the planets, the world, relationships, all of those things, business, whatever it might be, revolves around contribution. A business doesn't succeed unless it consistently contributes value to its customers. Relationships don't enrich themselves, and love doesn't expand unless people in the relationship are contributing to each other. You look at nature and you see that all of nature, the ecosystem, everything is contributing, right? And when speak to a college group, I say to young college students, no one wants to give you a job. Remember that. But companies are looking for people who can contribute to their success. So that is my final thought. It's all about how am I contributing today?
Love that. Love that. Love that. Love that. Love that. It reminds me of, and I've said it a bajillion times. It's like I used to tell my boys, when they're feeling down. I'm like, yeah, you're bummed, you didn't get the soccer ball, you didn't get on the team, or some girlfriend left you, whatever. Say, but go help somebody. If you want to feel better, don't wallow in your stuff or take a bad habit or go buy something or whatever. Go help somebody and you'll feel better. Because trust me, they probably have it worse than you do. And you'll feel better once you've helped them. And it's that contribution, giving back. We like to wallow in our stuff and me, and selfies and masks but when you genuinely, like you said, contribute, Makes a whole difference to the world.
Big difference, a big difference. The world has progressed forward because of the people who have contributed to that progression. It's a simple premise, but it's a profound one if you really reflect upon it and think about it.
Yeah. Did you hear the story about the gray wolves that they put back? I don't remember whether it was Yellowstone or it was one of the where they reintroduced the gray wolves. You hear that? What happened
I
with
think
that?
that was in Yellowstone. Yeah.
It changed the entire ecosystem, because they killed all
Mhm.
the wolves because they thought they were predators. And then when they brought them back, it literally changed everything from the grass to the bugs, the rerouted streams that hadn't been there. Birds came back. It was I qualify. I have a card. I have an elder card. But we do. We have so much to contribute to the world. And I know when I talk to my mom, my 90-year-old mom, if I call her yesterday and I call her into today, she'll say, "You never call me." I'm like, "Dude, I talked to you yesterday." She goes, "I know, but it's like been 12 hours." But it's because she stopped contributing. She had worked her whole life. She was a hostess at a restaurant, very famous restaurant. She had lots of celebrities come in. They all write her cards. She's got pictures with all these celebrities. She was contributing, and now she's not. And it's really tough on her. And I think as we age, when we think we can't do it anymore, it really hurts us at our soul, doesn't it?
It does, and that's kind of sad for your mom. The only thing is, it's not as her mission on Earth isn't finished. There is some ways that she could contribute, right? And just by being an example of how to live vitally at the age of 90. I mean, I think that's extraordinary. A lot of living to do, you know.
Yeah, and I'm going to get her your book because I love the title. I'm going to say, "Mom, last time I checked, you were still alive." Now, I can't confirm nor deny that, but I think you still are because you talk to me all the time. And I'm just going to tell her your mission on Earth just isn't finished. That's why you won't go. All right. So if you want to leave, finish your mission. So I'm going to go get her your book. She loves to read. So I'm going to go get her your book and have her read it and just
Wonderful.
say, "This is from my friend David. And please read the book and go do something with yourself."
Love it. I love it. I love it. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
Wonderful, Gary.
Well, David, you've been fabulous. Everybody, we've been blessed with just a little bit of time from David McNally, and he's again the author of best-selling books, Even Eagles Need a Push. Love that title. The Eagle's Secret, Be Your Own Brand. He's also the producer of two inspiring documentaries, The Power of Purpose and If I Were Brave. David's groundbreaking new book, If You're Alive, Your Mission on Earth Isn't Finished. Can't get enough of that title. David, thank you so much. Where can people find you? Where can they get more of David? Where can they hear your stuff, get your stories, read your books? Where can we go?
Yeah, good. Thank you for that, Gary. Yeah, my website is very comprehensive, and that's davidmcnally.com. People will find out a lot of information. If they want to reach out to me personally, just email me at info@davidmcnally.com. I will respond. Love to be in contact with anybody that needs to ask something or has a question. So that's the best way to do it. All my books are available on Amazon, so they're very accessible. I have the audio version of If You're Alive coming out in about a month, which is great. Just finished recording that. And then we're launching an online program called Alive and Wise, The Joy of Being an Elder. So we've got a lot of things going on at the moment. Yeah,
Well, you're obviously not slowing down, young man. I think that's wonderful. Now, did you read the audiobook?
I did. I did.
Awesome. I ask
I'm
that to every author. I love authors. I'm fascinated with them, as you can tell. I interview a lot of authors, and I always ask them, "Did you do?" And a lot of them don't. And I'm like, why wouldn't you read your own book?
right. I don't know why either. I know for me that for shoot. My book, Be Your Own Brand, that I co-authored, is narrated by someone else, and I'm not very happy with it. So I decided to do this one for myself.
For you. It makes a huge difference because I tell people, I go, I listen to it, and the person reading it didn't wasn't the person who was in the what I was feeling from the book, right? So I said, forget it, and I just bought the book and had listened in my own brain or what I thought it would sound like. So that's wonderful. Again, everybody, please go to David's website, check out his books. Here's some of the things he does. Some fabulous stuff. He's got a lot of great stuff coming up. Because, like Tom Petty said, don't slow down, man. He won't slow down. So here you go. All right, everybody. David, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity. Great
Yeah,
conversation.
loved it. Loved it. Thanks,
Good.
guys. I'll see ya.